מלך העולם, אשר קדישנו במצוותיו, וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה. Okay, you had a question, Ed.
Talmud.
Talmud.
Does it talk and discuss anything about
Yes.
about solar eclipses?
I'm sure it does, and I don't know.
Okay.
How's that for an answer?
That's an honest answer.
I have no doubt that it does, because it talks about everything.
Yeah, I know.
So I have no doubt, and on my phone I don't have the Talmud. I do have it on as a computer program on my computer.
Does the Torah talk about it at all? Is there anything in the Torah about the sun will be dark for 10 minutes? I'm just curious.
Yeah, they do talk about it according to just some random website. So I will tell you how I look at it. Okay, especially right now, I look at it as a parallel to the ninth plague of darkness, and that it is a portent. It is a preface to there being a coming redemption like Passover. If the ninth is just one of the practices of philosophies of how to interpret text, if this is true, then this is true, right? Well, it was true that we had a ninth plague of darkness, and then it led to a Passover. So I am going under the premise that we had a ninth plague of we had a plague of darkness, and there will now be.
And we're going into Pesach.
That's why I'm looking at this time. Yeah, that's exactly.
But we're not going to have another total until 2044. So.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we will have. This one will bring some peace. That's right.
Okay. The whole full, of course.
That's my answer.
All right. Just curious. I thought of it.
Question. Joel and I were talking, and isn't there a parallel between what's happening with the Jewish community, both in Israel and the United States, and what happened when the Second Temple fell?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And there's a parallel to everything in the Book of Judges. The Book of Judges literally, as we studied it, everything's fine, and then they do what is not good in the eyes of the Lord, and then bad things happen, and then they cry when they cry out enough. Right? Yeah, we're taught that the Second Temple is destroyed because of baseless hatred.
Yeah, and then the Zikari and all the rest of them.
Yeah, that's.
Excuse me.
So look, on October 8th, everyone was together. Everyone had it. Everyone was unified as a Jew.
Yeah,
pretty much. By December 8th, that wasn't true, and by April 8th, it certainly is not true.
Yeah, they were talking about that on Fox News today. About Gutfeld was talking about, and after 9/11,
yeah,
they were talking about it for some time, and we're still sort of talking about it. But when this happened in Israel, 1 day, 2 days, and all of a sudden it's something in history.
Yeah.
And it's smaller than it was, and it wasn't as bad as it was, and all that crap.
Yeah. Well,
it's amazing. And what happened in Michigan is atrocious with the flag burning.
Yeah.
Now,
well,
here in this country, right in Michigan.
Well, what do you expect? They shouldn't even be here. They should be back in Gaza.
Well, that's the irony. It really is ironic if you think about it. That all these people are protesting for a place that if they went to, they would be killed.
Yeah. By their own people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like the gay guys who were out busy protesting this. They were the first ones to be thrown off a building.
Oh, my favorite one is Queer Jews for Palestine.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one. Yeah. Okay.
Before we start, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You were trying to help us to be kosher or to at least eat in.
Right.
And you said predators, scavengers, and herbivores.
Right.
Totally doesn't match what I understand. You have a split hoof and you eat the cud.
So there's a definition, right? You got to have a split hoof, you got to chew your cud, and you got to have a cloven hoof.
Yeah, but that leaves out a whole lot of
Every
herbivores,
animal,
obligate
hold on,
herbivores.
every animal that has a split hoof and chews their cud is an herbivore or an omnivore. It's not a predator,
Okay.
scavenger, or it's a grazer.
I don't think.
And they
it
work
says-
as herds.
Yeah.
They work as a group to hunt together.
Yeah.
So that's the, I can't get a pen that works. That's the understanding of what's really going on. So I think it's going to look like Christmas in a minute. No. So look, to me, the goal is to just start by just saying, okay, I'm not going to eat trafe. I'm not going to eat a scavenger. I'm not going to eat a predator.
Right, so chickens are predators.
No,
Yeah,
they're considered scavengers.
They're considered, but they can be predators.
Anything can be a predator.
Well, no, a horse can't be a predator, but it doesn't have a split hoof. I'm sorry, I know I'm splitting hairs, but it's just, the two directives don't
But a chicken's not a predator anymore. It defends itself. It doesn't go hunting for its food.
If the chicken finds a nest of mice, it'll eat the baby mice in a heartbeat. If it finds other living creatures, it'll eat them in a heartbeat. So it behaves as a predator.
My understanding is no, it doesn't. It doesn't go searching for its food like a
Yeah, it
predator.
does. If you let it, if you take it out of the chicken coop.
My understanding is I don't look. You know more about animals than I do, but that's not my understanding. Is that there's predators, scavengers, and grazers.
Okay.
I think.
And remember, if you're looking at birds, it's not an eagle. It's not a vulture, right?
Okay.
If you're looking at fish, trout's, you can call a trout a predator too.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a grazer. A salmon is a grazer, as opposed to an eel or a shark, right?
Okay.
A cow is a grazer, as opposed to a lion, a tiger, a bear, or an omai.
Yeah.
Which I still have yet to even be offered. No one ever has asked me if I want to eat an omai. I don't know why. So
And a catfish is a scavenger.
a catfish is a
Oh,
scavenger.
yeah, that and those scales, yeah.
Well, my feeling is that what the description from the Torah, from where was it, Leviticus, right?
Right.
The description talked about the animals and specifics about the animals, but they fall into the category that you mentioned. They are all herbivores.
And
It doesn't mean that one that doesn't have a cloven hoof that chews its cud, it could still be a herbivore, and therefore would it be kosher, or must it have the cloven hoof? Because there are other herbivores that don't have that, I think.
That's true.
Again, the idea is that it's a hook.
Camels
It's not a
are
mission. It's a
example.
law that needs to be investigated because it's not for health. Raccoons are a clean animal. It's not for cleanliness. It's not for health. Chickens are not particularly. A number of these foods are not particularly healthy for you. But so that's the idea behind it.
And that was the rationalization for some Jews saying, well, all pigs are healthy now. They study them, and trichinosis is almost not existent, so therefore we can eat them.
Yeah.
But
And,
you can't. Because
There is,
why don't we eat it? Because the law
there's
says.
an interesting debate going on about one pig, a Barashka pig from Indonesia. It has a cloven hoof and it chews a cud.
That would be the kosher.
There's a big debate,
And that would be kosher. I don't know
Yeah.
how
big
that works.
debate about that particular pig.
Okay, do with that. All right. So
All right. So,
That confuses it.
what happens in the 19th century? Prior to the 19th century, Jews pretty much are living totally separate in their villages, in their shtetls, right? In the 19th century, they start moving into cosmopolitan areas. They start doing arts and literature and science. And we're going to come back to that concept in a minute, but one of the things that happens is you have 1776, something happens that's kind of a big thing. We get America. Then you have the French Revolution. You start getting people, wanting to, Ed, you got to take that and give some and pass it around. So, and then someone's got to take it with them for tzedakah. You start getting people who, in countries, who want to have their nationalism, their identities again. They don't want to be Russian, they want to be Polish. They don't want to be fill in the blank of an empire, they want to be their own nation. This all starts happening in the 1800s. Well, it happens in Jews too. And you get the Jewish form of nationalism, which is called Zionism. Okay? And so you get Zionism. Why is it called Zionism? Why is it that kind of nationalism? Because Zion is the name we use for Israel. So, no, you take it. You give it to somebody. So, what is? It's the idea for us to have back our national homeland.
I can't do it. Sorry.
Can you either take it or give it? Okay. So,
Well,
so what do we have? She's cold. She doesn't have time. She's cold.
Just want to make sure it's out there.
She's very cold. Her sweatshirt says so.
thank you.
So what happens? You start getting a movement for Jews to have their own nation as well. And that's called Zionism. Now, we call the founder of modern Zionism this man named Theodor Herzl, who lives from 1806 to 1904, who really does a lot of work to, yeah, go ahead.
Wasn't the Dreyfus case a tremendous impetus for Zionism?
That's later on.
Okay.
Movement starts before. The movement, first of all, we've always been Zionists.
Yeah.
Because we've always prayed for
Return
return to Israel. Okay. So what happens?
Excuse me.
You start getting this movement, mostly in a couple of places, mostly in England, to an extent America, but mostly in England and to an extent in Russia, to have our own nation. And they're for different reasons. In England, it's because we're nationalists. We don't want to be part of an empire. In Russia, it's because we're tired of being, beat the daylights out of every other day. In America, as it starts happening more in the late 19th century, early 20th, again, it's because we want to have our homeland and we're idealistic. All right. And you get this movement called Zionism. And it really becomes very prevalent. Do you know the year of the Dreyfus Affair? Do you happen? Does anyone know it off the top of their head? 'Cause
I
I
think
actually don't.
1880 something.
The what?
Dreyfus. I think in the 1880s.
The Dreyfus Affair is 1894.
Sorry.
1894 until its resolution in 1906.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get this anti-Semitism. You get it, and it's always about hating the Jew. And in 1917, you get this thing called the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration is a declaration made in the name of Lord Balfour that if you help us win the wars, you're going to have your own homeland. Is basically what the declaration is. It's a promise that England will make Israel its own independent nation, and that will happen after World War II, as we know. In 1948, we'll get the modern state of Israel. But here's a piece to understand about Zionism and about the world. And most of this is, the person who really elucidated this beautifully is Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. He really was the chief rabbi of the UK until he died a few years back. Brilliant, eloquent man. Much more eloquent than I could dream of being. And remember, we go back to the roots of anti-Semitism with the mistranslation that we have horns, with the drinking of blood. Let's go back a little bit deeper. Why does someone hate the Jew? And it's really kind of a simple answer when you think about it. The Gospels are written as a polemic against the early Christians are persecuted by the Jewish establishment. The Gospels are written as a polemic against the Jewish establishment. So the Gospels, which are written decades after Jesus' death, they're not written by Mark, Luke, etc. They're written in their name. And they put in things that clearly could not be true. Right? We think we talked about this, right? Did we talk about this? You couldn't have had a trial for Jesus during Passover because you can't have a trial. Okay, second day of Passover, it's hot. Okay. But they put this in because they're blaming the Jew. But where that ends up going is, here's Mr. Poloni. Mr. Poloni is a Christian in 400, 800, 1200, 1500, doesn't matter when. And Mr. Poloni has been taught that Jesus is God, right? Not the Son of God. Jesus is God in human form. And he's taught the Jews killed God, deicide. I don't know what that was, but it was like deicide. There's an exclamation point. Mr. Poloni has a problem because he reads all this and he says, okay, the Jews killed God, so why are they allowed to be alive? Gives him one of two choices, okay, at an unconscious, subconscious level. Either Jesus is not God, that's why they're allowed to be alive, or they are related to Satan and the devil. Okay? Because otherwise, one of those two things has to be true, because otherwise, why are these mortal Jews allowed to survive, let alone thrive? Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? Yes? Okay. Yes?
Well, there's another thing too. I mean, if the Jews killed God, why do they still pray to the God that they killed?
But they don't pray to Jesus.
No.
So the logic is what they're really doing is praying to Satan.
Oh.
Okay? All right. And it's all a ruse. Okay? Someone actually took a video of me teaching. Did that ever go down? Orlando, do you know if it ever was taken down?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Okay. It's
I
trademark material. Or,
trademark material.
okay, so I did a class on Americans, Jews in America, right? On Talmud and tobacco. And so someone found the video, excerpted the part about Columbus being Jewish, took my image, put me in a satanic church with red lightning bolts coming in and me and out of me.
Wow.
Okay. They took this amount of time. And they then, at the end of this video, they said, see, all of this is proof that the Jews were colonialists on America. It's the Jews' fault that Native Americans were killed. Christianity is a psyop of Judaism. Psychological operation. If you hate Jew, if you need to either go to God is not Jesus, or Jews are involved with the devil, which is easier to go to?
Yeah.
Hate the Jew. Okay. And if someone really believes in Jesus as the Christ, they don't do what's called replacement theology. What does that mean? So Vatican II establishes it better, but if someone really understands Christian theology, then what they will say is that God never broke his covenant with the Jewish people, and that Christianity is merely another branch on the same tree.
Right. Reformed Jews.
They're just there's a lot of love, and since Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, and the way to get into heaven, I want my Jewish friend to join me in heaven, so I want him to accept Jesus. Because otherwise, if he dies before Jesus returns, he's not going to make it to heaven. Okay, that's a loving Christian attitude, which is why when someone wants to convert me, I just say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's very nice of them. They want me in heaven with them.
My best friend
Right.
continues to say, I will be a completed Jew if he has anything to say about it. But if I'm not, he's okay too.
He's okay too. But he's saying it out of love.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
But if you're not confident in your faith, so that's actually the theology. But then there's something called replacement theology, which is that the Christian theology replaced the Jewish theology because they did not accept Jesus. If you accept replacement theology, which is the vast majority of history, okay, because most people don't really have faith. And remember, throughout the Middle Ages and beyond, people aren't reading the text. They're doing what their priest is telling them.
Yeah.
Moreover, they're not reading in Hebrew, right? They're not studying it. They're not learning it. And they're reading translations. So if someone is into that replacement theology, then they've replaced Judaism because Jews are evil. Okay? It becomes this inherent hatred towards Jews. Because otherwise, Orlando, did you make that phone call? Were you able to make that phone call?
Yes, I did, but nobody knows.
Okay. Otherwise, they have to say, okay, wait a minute, he's not God. And that messes with them in a big way too.
Yeah.
So you got to understand that that's the first part. Now, in the Middle Ages, they hate us. They hate us, period. How do they manifest and show their hate? In the Middle Ages, they show their hate. They hate us for our religion. We eat different. We look different. We dress differently. We celebrate Sabbath differently. All these things. And that's how they throw your hate. Because hate is usually expressed in a way that is acceptable within its society or cultural norm. You don't express hate in a way that's not accepted. So the example moving forward is in 1950, you weren't going to find many people who would say, let's kill the Jew, because the Holocaust had just happened. Okay, go ahead, Alex.
I read in a book about these two authors. They had this theory that Jews were hated in the Middle Ages also because compared to the majority of people, including the royalty, they were literate.
That's all. Now you're talking about how it gets manifest and other reasons they hate us. We're literate when they're not.
Yeah.
We're hated, as we talked about months ago. We're hated because the serf, we collect the royalty doesn't know how to do the mathematics.
Right.
We're the bill collectors. Serf hates us, and the royalty hates us. All those attributes.
Yeah,
But at a deep level, there's a hatred for Jews. So now, how do they manifest it? Well, in the Middle Ages, they manifested as a hate for our religion. I don't hate the Jew. I hate Judaism. Okay? Is there a difference?
The evolving hatred.
The hate that mutates, the virus that mutates. It's exactly what it's used as. It's a hate that mutates, literally. So, in the Middle Ages, that hate is manifest as religion. By the time we get into the 18th and especially 19th century, Jews are now involved in culture. They're involved in science. They're involved in literature. They're in the cosmopolitan world, even though they're separated. So now we don't hate them for the religion because it's not popular, even in the 19th century, to say, I hate that person because they're this religion or that religion. And so we're hated for our race. Because what happens in the 18th, 19th century, especially 19th century, you get the scientific study of race. Science determines that certain races have certain proclivities, certain races have certain intelligence, certain races do not have certain intelligence, etc. Even in one of the early immigration acts, I think it's in the 1900s or in the 19-teens of the 20th century, the American Immigration Act has to do with Italian, Gypsy, Jewish, etc. Okay? So now we are hated for our race. Everyone follow that? This movement of Zionism is going to create a nation of Israel eventually. And so now the hate will be, because you can't hate someone for their race. That's not very good by the mid-20th century, right? Can't hate them for their religion. We hate them. We hate their nation. I like Jews. I just hate Israel.
That's where we are today.
Okay? Because you can't say, I hate their race. I hate their religion. I don't even like the term anti-Semitism. It is a race-based term. I like the term it's Jew hatred. Let's call it what it is.
Well, anti-Semitism would include hating Arabs,
Which is
and
not what it's
so
about.
Arabs can't be anti-Semitic.
This is how it gets. And it's done in whatever is the popular, the issue of the day. Scientific race, we hate them for their race, right? Since it's human rights, that's why you see constantly the objections to Israel based on human rights. A nation that is more ethical than any other in the history of the world, including America. Okay, so what happens in the early 19th? Go ahead.
All I'm going to say is that this professor at West Point who teaches urban warfare.
Oh, I know. He said that we're the most ethical army in the history.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
No question.
I heard.
So what happens? Herzl really starts bringing about modern Zionism. We need our own state. That is then picked up by other great leaders who become the early leaders of Zionism. And in the Zionist Congress, you have leaders from all over the world. My favorite is a man named Vladimir Jabotinsky.
Yeah.
I love Jabotinsky.
So do I.
Jabotinsky is,
He's my boy.
you know, it makes sense he's your boy. Jabotinsky is not exactly, he's not exactly gentle, okay? He's very, very clear. Okay, so you have these Jews from different areas coming in. So we're going to have Jews from Europe and Jews from England and Jews from Russia and Jews from America. They're all going to come together. How do we get to this, our homeland? What do we need to do? From England and America, you have political power, but you also have money. Okay? There are Jews that have money, and you can raise money from Jews in England and America. And to an extent, Europe.
France, too.
And that's to an extent, Europe. In Russia, you got Jews who were basically socialists, young idealists who want to have a nation state because they want a better place to live. They want to make their dream utopia. And these groups come together, and these Jewish leaders come together, and they start to, what do we need to do to make this state? Well, politically, we need to really push on this Balfour Declaration. England promised that they would give it to us. World War I ended. This is now a mandate of England. So we're part of the British Empire. It's a mandate of Palestine as part of England. And by the way, Palestine is not what Israel, that whole region is called Palestine. And they proceed to try and do it politically and by raising money. And what do they do with the money? Some Americans, some English, but a lot of Russians, especially a lot of people from places that really didn't accept Jews, go to Israel and they say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take you. You're tired of getting a pogrom, right? Having your daughters raped and everything else. So you ready to go to Israel and serve on a kibbutz? You're going to work as a community. You're going to be socialist.
Yeah.
And you're all going to come, right? And you're going to do teaching, and you're going to do medicinal stuff, and you're going to do bathroom cleaning and
Farming.
and,
Yeah,
and we're going to go make this.
And my grandfather was approached. He owned a farm in Petaluma.
I knew a man he's deceased now many years, but I knew a man whose family was, I want to say from Morocco or somewhere around there, who his father was one of those early settlers and developed how you graft certain fruit trees onto other fruit trees. And he was explaining to me, do you guys know anything about fruit tree grafting?
Is that kosher?
You know, yeah, absolutely. But you can only graft certain fruits with other fruits.
Yeah.
I forget what it was. Like you can't graft an apple with an orange, but I think you can graft an apple with a pear.
Yeah.
Right? Something. There are all these different. Am I explaining it right?
Yeah.
I
I think that it's even more specific. I think you can graft stone fruits together or you can graft apples with other related.
You can do all, yeah, it's a whole, so his father was the guy who developed that in Israel,
Wow.
Cool.
which was really, really cool. And I knew him 25 years ago, and he was in his late 70s, early 80s then. And it was his father who had done that. He was born in Israel. So they start to make strawberries bloom in the desert. Okay, if you go to Israel today and you go have breakfast, on the menu in the buffet, often you will find mangoes and watermelons.
Yeah.
Because they figured out how to grow mangoes and watermelons in that desert. Okay, I don't exactly know how because I can't grow a watermelon or a gourd when I try, and I can try. I can't do that without being in the desert.
I
So
can't grow any plants.
that's yeah, it's just so.
Right.
So that nationalism and that Zionism becomes the hate for us mutates to a hate for Israel. I like Jews, just not in Israel. Well, here's one of the things that you need to understand. Before Islam, before Christianity, going back over 3,000 years, you have the Davidic kingdom. Okay? You have the kingdom of Saul and then the Davidic kingdom building Jerusalem. And we're there continuously until all the way through time, today and beyond. So other entities, empires conquer us,
We're still here.
whether it's the Greeks, whether it's the Romans, whether it's the Babylonians, whether it's the Assyrians, whether it's the Persians, whether it's the Mamluks, whether it's the Ottomans, whether it's ultimately the British. But it's always, we're still Israel. All these other states that you find in the Middle East, they don't have a history. They have made up history that comes as a result of World War I. They then, the British government says, okay, you guys are all related. You're going to be the king of this kingdom. You're going to be the king of that kingdom. You're going to be the king of that kingdom. But they don't have a history going back thousands of years. There is no Jordanian kingship going back thousands of years, or Saudi Arabian kingship, or
Egypt.
Egypt had a kingdom going back
Yeah.
to Pharaoh,
Yeah.
and then
And
didn't.
Right.
They didn't. But Yemen, Libya, these are countries that didn't exist. They just didn't exist until after World War I. Prior to that, they were part of this region of Palestine. So we get our little piece of land. There's over 150, I think it is, Christian majority nations. I think there's 50 some Islamic nations. There's one Jewish one. And in this battle, in this struggle to go get an Israel, we're offered different land. I mean, at one point, where some people suggest that we take, I think, Madagascar.
Right.
It's like, no, that's not our homeland. Our homeland is. So the reality is,
Also Alaska.
we asked offered Alaska.
Yeah.
I like Alaska 6 months of the year. The other 6 months, I'd go crazy with the dark.
And they've got great farming there. You can grow mosquitoes.
Great, you can fish. You can just toss your net in and get salmon. So,
That's right.
and it also has huge alcoholism, because who wants to in the middle of the darkness? Actually, we took our honeymoon on a cruise to Alaska, and Allison said, maybe we should find you a congregation up here. I said, sweetheart, I know you. You'd be fine during the summer months. I would be dead during the winter months the first year, because you would kill me. Okay, you would just go nuts and kill me.
Alcoholism among the Inuits.
It's huge there, period, among everybody.
And in Greenland as well.
It's just,
The Inuits.
you don't want to be there.
have that problem.
So what happens with Israel? We have this nation, and the hatred becomes a hatred for our nation. How can you overlay that? And first of all, understand that we are the indigenous people there, right? We are the indigenous tribe. Well, one of the things that happens is, as we're going back, we're all part of this Jewish Congress, and two of us are from England. Okay, you're from England, and I'm from America, and you have access politically, and I have access to go raise money. So we go raise some money. Two of you want to get the heck out of Russia. Okay, you want to go, or wherever else, and you want to go be idealistic, and you want to go start this new homeland for the Jewish people. What are you going to do? Here's what we're going to do. There's this piece of land that Mahmoud owns. Okay? Mahmoud's land is worth $1 an acre. Okay, it's valueless. It's desert, it's swamp, whatever it is. It's horrible. We're going to go offer him $10 an acre. Okay? And we do. And Mahmoud says, this is amazing. You're offering me 10 times the value of this worthless land. Okay? And then we bring you guys over, and you take that land and you farm it and you make it into a paradise. And over a generation or two, you have now taken this horrible place and you have made it into valuable land.
Is this before or after the partition?
This is before.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is the early 20th century, mid 20th. This is
So
okay.
part of it was that we actually owned much
We
of the
own
land. that
not
we're
enough, but we
talking
own that. Yes,
We bought it as well.
and we overpaid for it because you and I are
Yeah.
willing to say
Yep.
they're going to work for it. We're going to get a Jewish nation. We're going to buy it.
Yeah.
Okay. Mahmud has a grandson named Abdullah. Okay, and you guys have a grandson named David. Okay, now your grandson now has this land, which is valuable. You're growing fruit. You're making these trees, and you're making a tree that's half lime and half nectarine.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one in our backyard now.
Huh?
It smells like a nectarine, or it smells like actually not nectarine, mandarin orange. Excuse me. It smells like a mandarin orange. Looks like a mandarin orange. Orlando, it's a lime when you're inside.
Wow.
Okay, it's grafted somehow. This tree was made. Smells great. Salad dressing is about the only thing I can figure out what to do with it. So, you guys, David, your grandson, has got this land with fruit trees. He's making money. He's doing well. The kibbutz is doing well. Abdullah, Mahmoud's grandson, well, he's got a problem because Mahmoud got his $10 an acre for 1,000 acres. Okay, let's say 100 acres, so he's got $1,000. He was ecstatic, and within a few years, he spent all his money, and maybe he didn't invest it right, and maybe he just spent. Abdullah is poor, okay, and Abdullah's looking at David, and he's saying that SOB Jew stole the land from my grandfather because that land's now worth $100 an acre. And that SOB Jew stole it. He ripped off my grandfather, who was an innocent goat herder. And he underpaid for $100 an acre. He only paid him $10. What was the land worth? $1. Go ahead.
Rabbi, this is the old story they said about Jews in the Middle Ages. They said it every time. They always accused us of doing this and that and the other thing. And it was all because we had something that we got legitimately that they wanted.
But when they got rid of it, they didn't want it.
Right.
Mahmoud was very happy to get rid of his land at $10 an acre.
Same story, but in different shoes.
So now,
Bought goats.
so this is why I love Jabotinsky.
Yeah.
Because Jabotinsky says
No.
this idea is a bad idea.
Yeah.
He says 2-3 generations from this, they're going to be angry at us. And he's 100% right.
1,000.
Okay. Right. He's totally right at that point. So what happens in this Zionist movement? Well, after World War I, we get in fights with the British to try and get our independence. And we get in a fight with the Arabs. And sometimes the Arabs are unified with us and sometimes they're not. And we get these guerrilla warriors. One of our convents, Harel Goldstein, his father was one of the pioneers. And they actually, from the Harel company, I think it was Rabin, I think was the one that he was second in command to. Harel's got great stories about his dad. And they'd made it was either Rabin or Begin, one of these guys. And that they made a deal. Whoever would have a son first, they'd name him Harel after their company. That was our Harel. 60 years old or so. So what happens is that this Zionism we start getting our nation. Between World War I and World War II, we're really fighting let's get the Balfour Declaration. We're buying land. And we start getting towards before World War II, then through World War II and right after World War II, we get these people like Ben Gurion and Chaim Weizmann and Golda Meir. And they are looking for and desperately seeking the ability to have a Jewish homeland of Israel. They raise money, they go around the country. Golda Meir was apparently an amazing fundraiser. Go around the country. We need to do this. We need our own homeland so the Holocaust will never happen again. The idea being that as long as there's an Israel, as long as there's a strong, independent Israel, no Jew has to go through a Holocaust. That was the idea. But that requires an Israel that is strong and independent. So the hatred. So this is how we get this Zionistic movement that happens, right? And in the process, there's all the hatred that now becomes manifest. It's mutated to not be a hatred of Jews because they're Jewish, but a hatred for their nation.
Mhm.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Period. It is anti-Semitism.
Unfortunately, it spills over a bit too.
Yeah.
See, I agree, but I also disagree. As far as I'm concerned, Jew hatred is eternal
That's not. It's how it manifests is different.
because the hatred that they had back in the Middle Ages and
Same hatred.
the same.
Because you're not
hatred-
disagreeing. You're saying the exact same thing. It's the same hatred, but it manifests as a hatred against religion, a
That's
hatred against
definition
race.
for it, that's all.
The hate is the hate.
Yeah.
But now they choose to say, okay, I can say I hate the religion. I can say I hate the race. I can hate the nation.
But what's interesting about that period of history from the 1900s to about 1940s, you had British officers who were staunch Zionists. There were
Yep.
two in particular who I really admire.
There were a number of them. There were also a number, but see, here's the piece to remember. The hatred is the hatred.
Yeah.
The reason it's the most insidious hatred in history is because
Well,
unlike other hatreds, it changes to how it manifests and
I
mutates.
agree. I'm just pointing out these particular men. The man who discovered the red pig in East Africa. He was an ardent Zionist.
There were look,
Artie Wingate.
today we have Christian Zionists,
Look at the
which is fabulous.
colonization in this country here.
It's
That's wonderful.
but the hate, because they don't have hate in their heart.
no,
Those who hate, they just want to say it in different ways.
yeah, that's true. I
When
agree.
someone says that Palestine should be from the river to the sea, they're saying that there should be no Jewish nation. It's the way
That's
they
right.
express Jew hatred.
That's right.
Okay, and they're expressing it in a way that is palatable to other people. Okay. You may have noticed in the last 6 months, have you noticed anyone in Congress has been extremely quiet? Lon Omar has been very quiet,
Yeah.
hasn't she? Very, very quiet.
Why?
Because she's clearly hates Jews.
Yep.
She's made it clear she hates Jews. They don't want to have her tied to the issue of hating Israel. Because then it says, oh, see, this is just a way of manifesting Jew hatred. So she's been very quiet.
She has.
Okay.
Talib, on the other hand,
Talib
is
is,
nuts.
As is all of them. So
She's a virulent hatred.
So what you have now is this Zionist that starts with Herzl, really the end of the 19th century into the 20th century, ultimately going to the formation of our nation. Okay. What's the other thing that precipitates the formation of Israel? The Holocaust. So let's go back. If you repeat a lie loudly enough, often enough, it is repeated. It is viewed as true. People believe that there's such a thing as Palestine, and there isn't. Prior to that, in Germany after World War I, Hitler starts blaming everything on the Jew. And ultimately, this leads to the Holocaust. And it didn't just happen. The Nazis kept testing different things to see how would the world react when they know we do this, when we know they do this, when they know that we did Kristallnacht, all these things. The world didn't react.
No.
So why shouldn't they have concentration camps? The world's not going to react. And if you talked to, I don't know if there are that many alive, but in the past, if you talked to a Holocaust survivor who was in the camp, many of them, their rage was not at the Germans as much as it was at the Americans and the English.
Yeah.
Because they would fly over the camps every day to go do their bombing, but never take out the camp.
In the book I just finished about the so-called friend of the Jews, FDR. Boy, oh
I
boy,
don't know who called him a friend of the Jews.
my family thought they lived and died by him.
I thought he was a friend of Deutsche Republic.
Yeah.
So
He was a scumbag.
he was.
It's my understanding the New York Times was owned by Jews, and not
Was.
only did they not, they did not say anything, they actually sided on the.
Yeah, I don't know
German
if it's owned by Jews or not. I actually don't know, but I do know that they were very pro,
side. Oh,
and they hid things.
terrible.
And so, yeah, there's a great history. That was the paper every New York Jew read.
The only time the Oaks family did anything was to get their family out in Germany. Other
So
than that, they
you
didn't
got
do
the, you
that.
got these, you got. So what you have is this Holocaust, right? And no one believes it's going to happen. Even when people got out of the camps, when people no one believed that they would do this. Now, what did the Holocaust do? Hitler truly believed every Jew should be killed, and he was it was his scapegoat. If a group is having bad problems and they can either look and say, what am I doing? Or they can blame it on someone.
Right.
That's what the Jew has been done. And so the Holocaust happens, it's all blamed on the Jew. Okay. And ultimately, all the horrors of the Holocaust and the concentration camps and the death camps, I don't have the energy to go into it because we all know about it.
Yeah.
I'm too raw as it is anyhow for the last 6 months. So, but here's what the Holocaust does. The Holocaust is a machine to kill the Jew. Not to torture the Jew, but to kill the Jew. And to get rid of the Jew. And it is a machine. The way the Zyklon B in the camps, there's a powerful film worth watching called Night and Fog.
Yeah.
French film. And it's made, you can find it on YouTube. It's like in 8 parts. And it is a composition of footage from post-World War II camps, footage of the Americans when they had liberated the camps, and footage Hitler had taken because he thought the world would be grateful to him for having destroyed the Jewish world. He actually would go through Europe and he would collect things from different areas because he wanted to create what he called a museum for the extinct race. And it's a very disturbing film. And you've seen it, it's very disturbing. And so you see a pair of glasses just sitting there. You pull back and it's a little pile of glasses. Pull back and it's this mountain of glasses or of hair. Shows them taking the skin of Jews and making it into lampshades.
Book covers.
It
Went to
was-
what, Harvard? Or whatever college, Ivy League college.
Yeah, but it's horrible. And like Hamas, they took film footage because they thought everyone would be happy for them and grateful. And Hamas has proven that that's ultimately are. But the Holocaust happens, and it cost the Germans a lot of money to do the Holocaust, and may have led to their losing the war. Their commitment to the death camps and the concentration camps. Financially, it may have led to losing the war.
Well, they kept pushing the trains through, and they stalled off ammunition trains so they can get the.
It was not smart strategy, but it was what they did.
What they want.
And they did things. So if you go to the Danube, which is Hungary, right?
Right.
And you go,
Austria.
so if you go on the Danube, there's one area where there's a boardwalk, and it goes like this, and it keeps going on the boardwalk, and there's buildings here. You go over here, you will see all these bronze shoes. And it's
In Hungary?
yeah, and it's to I believe it's Hungary, and it's to memorialize what happened. The Germans they couldn't afford bullets, so in wintertime and my friend Andy Stevens was across the river and saw this, and he's now in his late 90s, And God bless them. And they would tie 3 Jews to each other in the cold Danube in the winter, shoot the one in the middle, and throw them into the ocean or into the river, so they'd all drown. One bullet could kill 3 Jews that way. And there's these boots, these shoes that you can see. Those names live in infamy. They are truly Auschwitz, Birkenau, Bergen-Belsen, Dachau, Babi Yar, all these different places. And it is the most horrific thing in history in that way up until recently. And one of the things that also comes out of the Holocaust is heroic virtue.
Excuse me.
Sure. So there is this one area, in Poland, in Warsaw, there was a huge Jewish community. They take all the Jewish community and put them in a ghetto, which is actually the center of town in Warsaw, I understand. And they ultimately have the Jews controlling themselves. You've always got people like Soros who are want to do that. And they have Jews and the Jewish authority, and when they tell the Jewish authority, okay, you guys are the Jewish authority, you've been making sure everyone lives in their little horrible bunkers, 12 to a room, but you were living 2 to a room instead. You're going to deliver us 200 people to go on trains to Auschwitz tomorrow, or your family, and you will go. And in the Warsaw Ghetto, on the first evening of Passover, April 19th, I believe, I always forget if it's 41 or 42. I think it's 41. It's 41 or 42. They say no more, and they, on the first eve of Passover, declare independence. They hoist a Jewish flag. And they hold off the German army.
But it wasn't the only revolt.
No,
There was others.
but it was the biggest one.
Yeah,
And it was the most devastating propaganda loss to the Germans.
right.
So the Germans figured these subhuman Jews.
Even in the camps there were revolts.
There were revolts all the time, but this was a big piece. They lasted longer than the entire country of Poland.
Yeah.
And they would go into munitions factories and steal munitions. They would go dressed as German uniforms. There's a great historical fiction book called Mile 18 by Leon Uris, which is a fabulous book. Mile 18 is a wonderful book if you haven't read it. It's great. It's just historical fiction, but it really tells you the story. It's by Leon Uris. But even though it's historical fiction, it's 2 books.
His 2 greatest books, Exodus and.
Oh, I don't know. He's written some other ones. He wrote QB7, which is pretty darn great.
Yeah. Those 2 stand out.
So he and they declare this, and ultimately the Germans have to level the whole ghetto and they burn it. But the Jews are living in bunkers underneath, and they come out and still they're fighting. By the way, who were the Jewish spies and things like that?
Pardon me?
Who were the Jewish spies? Orlando knows.
Oh, shoot.
They were the women.
Yeah.
See, if he's a spy, if I'm a spy, and Orlando's a Nazi, and we say, no, we're good Poles. He says, drop your pants.
Circumcision.
You can't be caught that way. So the women were the spies.
Yeah.
The women did so much. And
We don't talk about that.
no, they don't talk, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
Because your son's not safe. Your daughter, she gets stopped. It's like, I'm a Pole. What do I?
Well, the same way when in Israel, the women hid weapons and ammunition under their clothes.
So there's a great story about Harel's dad. Actually, he was there in the King David Hotel bombing, and as a result, he was blind for a while. He still wanted to help, so he actually went with the women, and they would disassemble guns, put them in their underwear and their bras, and then after they've been checked, they would just pull them back out and reassemble it.
And the British were so-called supposedly gentlemen, and they wouldn't search the women.
They wouldn't search the women. So there's a history of that. So all of this Holocaust leads, and the world feels guilty that they ignored it.
Yeah.
Or at least they want to say they feel guilty, and as a result, we end up getting Israel. So one of the things to understand is about the Holocaust is not just it did not just end up helping us get Israel. helping Israel happen and be recognized. And millions and millions of people deny that the Holocaust happened now.
Yeah.
But the other thing that it did was it shifted Judaism in a very powerful way. It's called post-Shoah theology. So the real term for the Holocaust is not Holocaust. It's Shoah, which is the same term we use to describe the destruction of the first temple and the destruction of the second temple. It's destruction by conflagration. I love that word. It's a great Scrabble word if you could ever get the letters. Okay. It's conflagration. Rolls off. But it was destruction by conflagration. That's what the Shoah was. And like the first temple and like the second temple, it forces Judaism to reevaluate what does it mean to be a Jew? Because the question is all that it has to lead to is, if God is all powerful, all knowing, all powerful, if He's omniscient, omnipotent, and all and everywhere, and good, 3 O's and a B. Okay, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and benevolent. How did the Holocaust happen? You can't even deal with it for the first 2 generations after it. But you start getting to what's called post-Shoah theology. How do you integrate that event into how we can be Jews now? How did the Holocaust happen? How did October 7th happen? If God is all powerful, all good, and everywhere, and this happens. There is a great thing. I think it's Maybaum who comes up with a wonderful thing that we should add a 614th commandment to the Torah. And the commandment should be, thou shalt not let Hitler have a posthumous victory. And what happens is, after the Shoah, you get a split in Judaism. Not talking about Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. We talked about how those denominations came about, right? Okay. You get a different kind of understanding of really what the denominations are. And I think it's a concept that I learned from Rabbi Shulchan. I think it's a concept worth really exploring. We talk about 3 types of Jews: Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. And what I would posit is that there are not 3 types of Jews: Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox, but there are 3 types of Jews. There's the Orthodox, the one who is observant in as a Jew, okay, who davens every morning, goes to Shachrit, goes to. Okay. There is the secular. Judaism is not the lens through which he or she views the world. Judaism is a cultural. I'm kind of committed to Judaism. I go 2 days a year. I'm going to go an hour on Rosh Hashanah, an hour and a half on Yom Kippur, whether I want to or not, to honor my father, whatever it may be. There's no commitment to Jewish values, Jewish ethics, Jewish teachings, or Judaism. And then you have this group here, which Rabbi Shulchan has called, and I just think it's a beautiful term, non-practicing Orthodox Jews.
That's me.
That's what all of us are. Because we're here learning. We have Jewish values, we're committed to Israel, committed to Judaism, committed to all those Jewish ethics and values. But it doesn't mean that everybody keeps kosher or wraps tefillin every morning. Okay? But the values are the same as this Orthodox guy over here, but the practices might be the same as the secular guy over here. You got this big group of non-practicing Orthodox Jews. And this is to a great extent as a result of the Holocaust. Because you still got the commitment, but do I really want to practice it? It didn't help them in the gas chamber. Easier not to. And we get this movement that ends up happening. And one of the things that also happens is that there becomes for many Jews on this side, becomes a commitment, instead of to Judaism, to Israel. People give to the Israel funds, they give to all that stuff. It becomes an important part. That's not happening now. The grandchildren of the men who gave tremendous amounts of money to Israel are not making donations like their grandparents did, even though they have more money than the grandparents did. And I'm talking, when I'm saying the people who gave a lot of money, I'm talking about the guys who are worth tens, hundreds of millions, or billions. those men who would write 6 and 7 figure checks, their grandkids aren't writing checks at all. Okay, which is very scary. It's a very scary thing. So you have these 3 kind of categories, and it's to a great extent because of the Holocaust. It really is because of the Holocaust. It changes how we interact with God, how we interact with Judaism.
Isn't another reason why these contemporary Jews who are so well situated don't give money is because they're more secular.
They're more secularized. That's exactly why. And now everyone came together on October 8th, didn't we?
Yeah.
Those grandkids were giving money to help Israel. You couldn't, money was flowing to Israel on October 8th like you wouldn't believe. December 8th, not so much. April 8th, even less. So it still comes back to the issue of the Holocaust, state of Israel, all these things, Zionism that created it. It comes back to the issue of, is the Jew committed to Judaism? For 3,000 years, our people have looked at the world through the lens of being a Jew. And the fear has always been assimilation. Go back to the Greco-Roman period. It's always been a fear of assimilation, right? We have assimilated. Now, it's interesting. How many of you know children of Holocaust survivors? Do you know any children of Holocaust survivors? Typically, they are either very observant or not observant at all.
The one I know is not observant at all.
It's very typical. Okay, there's a whole psychological syndromes, there's some patterns that are for children of Holocaust
He's got
survivors.
an Israeli citizenship as well.
So he knows he can go back.
Yes.
I know someone who was a Holocaust survivor who kept a suitcase packed all the time.
Yeah.
Huh.
No,
He's
his father,
deceased now, but he's
his parents.
That with some jewelry in the lining. Got to get out, you get out. So we're in a very interesting place. So then what happens in Israel? Because now Judaism, we've got the different denominations. We've got secular Jews, and we've got non-practicing Orthodox, and we've got Orthodox Jews, and we've got Israel. And then you get this Palestinian creation we talked about on Friday. In the 60s, 1967, you have the Six-Day War. 1973, you have the Yom Kippur War. And the world is turned upside down and inverted with a concept of the poor Palestinian, which we've talked about it extensively. And that's where we are with Israel with today. Yeah.
May I interject a question? It's my understanding, and I forgot where I heard it, that actually Israel, when the partition took place in 48, they offered to the Arabs who lived in the area, Palestinians, if you will, to stay and become part of the culture that we have.
They're constantly offering.
True or not?
My understanding is true, but I don't know. But my understanding is yours is that it is. And look, I think that we constantly are offering land for peace.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I read articles when I was 8, 9 years old about Jewish men running after the Arabs saying, please don't leave.
It is, what is going on now is very predictable.
Yeah.
Talked about why. But so you have Israel, okay, and that's modern Israel. And we are going through a change in everything right now with what's going on in the world in the last 6 months. And its survival is threatened. Let's be clear, its survival is threatened. So in the Jewish world, you start getting, again, assimilation, even in and especially in the rabbinate. So at what point is it the rabbis? See, I blame all of the problems in American Judaism on American rabbis,
Right.
which doesn't make me very popular with my colleagues. And that's being polite. Because in America, the rabbi's job is to say, this is right, this isn't right. Right? And, when the rabbinic schools started saying
It goes wrong.
that, see, when someone becomes ordained as a rabbi, what they do after that is their own business, right? But when the schools start saying, well, you can be in an interfaith marriage prior to being enrolling in rabbinic school, that's a problem for me. I don't have a problem with interfaith marriage, but how do I tell my children, I'd like you to marry a Jewish girl, when the rabbi over here, it's not like he did after he graduated. Okay, the conservative movement, the reform movement has accepted that for many decades, all sorts of things. The conservative movement, a number of years ago, because I know the man who was the first openly gay conservative rabbi. Okay, you could not be a gay man as a rabbinic student. But if you were a gay conservative rabbi, that was okay. Which leads me to think, so what, is the school making them gay?
Say that again.
It's kind of
Doesn't make
inconceivable.
sense.
So the conservative movement, for a long time, now you can be, but for a long time, they would not allow a gay
Rabbinic student,
rabbinic student.
but
But you could be a gay rabbinic rabbi.
how could you, if you couldn't get in, how could you be a gay?
Well, it means either that you were lying to get in or the school made you gay. To me, it's that simple. But okay?
Yeah.
But that's so as the movements have changed and have really gone farther and farther left politically and made more and more assimilation, not about Jewish values, but rather about whatever's the popular value of the time. There's a guy who's become a CNN pundit. And he got attention because Biden was speaking in Minnesota and he screamed out, Palestine from the river to the sea. I'm going to guess, based on how he looks, he's in his 60s with a goatee, with facial hair, but wears a dress, considers himself non-binary, gay, queer, and a rabbi. He graduated the Reconstructionist College. This is what CNN puts out as a rabbinic example, who's saying, we should have free Palestine. And I really want to look at the guy and say, do you not get that you are an auction item for fundraising for Hamas? They will bid to see who can behead you first, second, and third.
Yeah.
It's insanity. But rather than rabbis holding a boundary, it's changed. And you can see the change again in America since World War II, where you had to have a kosher kitchen in synagogues. And then the Reform kitchens, you didn't have to have a kosher kitchen. You could have treif. And then the conservative kitchens, you could bring in treif food into the synagogue, and then you didn't have to have a conservative kitchen even. We serve kosher food. I don't care what anybody eats. But as a temple, we're going to serve kosher food.
Yeah.
When I ran the Hillel program at Loyola Marymount, we had kosher meals. Anyone who's not kosher can eat the kosher. But people who are kosher can't eat the treif. Right? It's not a big thing, but it says a statement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And rabbis have surrendered who they are, American rabbis, over the last number of decades. You see it, people now say, oh, I wish we hadn't had a lockdown for COVID during the pandemic. I wish we hadn't had a lockdown. 4 rabbis in this town could have stopped there being a lockdown in California. 4 men, doesn't matter their names, could have said together, we're calling Gavin Newsom and saying, if you insist on a lockdown, we're going to tell our congregation they shouldn't donate for your campaigns. And Gavin Newsom would have pulled out that lockdown in 13 seconds.
Right.
However long it took him to call and sign a paper, because he would have lost millions of dollars. But the rabbis aren't stepping up. And that becomes a problem. I think when we talked about movements about Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach.
No.
Okay. Carlebach he was asked, What can you do to save American Judaism? You close every temple and every Jewish organization. Close them for a few weeks, then open them up with a whole new staff and all new rabbis.
Hmm.
How do you justify what someone does after they graduate is not the school's responsibility. Someone interfaith marries afterwards. That's their life. School has no fair enough. But how do you have them walk into the school already in an interfaith marriage? So the point is that Judaism has taken on this desire to assimilate to the popular values of the world.
How has Reconstructionism helped that?
So
happen?
I don't talk about Reconstructionist Judaism because I don't honestly understand it. To me, it seems like Judaism by vote. I don't understand
I
it.
mean, Schulweis was one of the
I-
biggest guys.
No, I think he was conservative, wasn't he?
He was conservative, but he was a Reconstructionist.
Yeah, I mean,
Very strong.
Kehillat Israel is a Reconstructionist temple. I don't understand Mordecai Kaplan, his theology. If you take God out of the equation, why do you care about reading Torah?
Hmm.
And I don't understand that community can say, well, we want to change the prayers to this or to that or to this or to that. I don't understand the theology, and I've studied it, and it's one of those things that just doesn't make sense to me, so I don't talk about it. In the same way that a completed Jew or Jew for Jesus makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Because if you
You're a
accept
Christian.
Jesus, if you accept Jesus as your Messiah,
You're a Christian.
you're a Christian. But moreover, the whole point of the Brit Chadash, of the new covenant called the Christian Scriptures, the New Testament, is that supersedes the old one, and you don't need to do any of these things. So why are you doing these things? I mean, if you want to do some of them just to honor where Jesus came from, I get. But I don't understand it.
I don't either.
It just doesn't make sense in my brain. So I don't, but Reconstructionist Judaism it never really caught on. The Reconstructionist College, which was very well funded, is in, I believe, Philadelphia. But there's one Reconstructionist synagogue in the LA area that I know, which is Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades. But I don't really understand the theology well enough to explain it.
Well, the women women who are rabbis, didn't that come from Reconstruction?
I think it came from Reform.
Yeah.
I think it came from Reform
I think
first.
there's a Reconstructionist congregation in Irvine, because I think
There might be.
I joined it for a period of time.
And did it make sense to you what they were doing?
I didn't stay very long. Number one, the rabbi was kind of a used car salesman, and number two, and he looked like Jay Leno, and he just looked really phony to me. But also, apparently, while he was rabbi there, he and the cantor had an affair and divorced their families and married each other, and were still leading the congregation.
Had a woman cantor?
Yeah,
Oh.
and I was not comfortable with that.
Did you buy a car?
No, but she leased one. So I don't understand the Reconstruction. I just don't get it. Okay, I'm just being honest. I don't get it. So I don't talk about it because
I don't get it.
I don't get it. Ironically, or interestingly, at JTS, which was the conservative rabbinic school, two men taught there at the same time who were both luminaries. Mordecai Kaplan, who, even though I don't understand a lot of his theology, he was brilliant. And there was a professor of ethics and Jewish mysticism named Abraham Joshua Heschel, who I have tremendous love and respect for a lot of reasons. So, and they both taught at JTS in that time period. And people who graduated JTS at that time period, who graduated in the 50s or the 60s from JTS were amazing scholars and rabbis. Those few who are still around are in their 80s or older now. So, I blame everything on the rabbinate because I think fish stinks from the head. It's just what I do. But so America has lost a lot of its Jewish identity. I remember being asked a question in rabbinic school. So what do you do when a donor comes up and he's $1 million donor and he says, my daughter's bat mitzvah is coming up, my son's bar mitzvah is coming up, I want them to have shrimp in the temple. And if you don't let me have shrimp in the temple at the hall, then I'm going to take my $1 million a year donation. I'm going to go down the street to the temple that will. And I watched so many of these students wrestling with this. And my answer, and my answer was the Johnny Carson story. If you know the Johnny Carson story, the urban myth is that a very hot model is with Carson, and Carson goes to this hot model. He says, "Would you have sex with me for $10,000?" And she thinks about it, and she goes, "Yes, Mr. Carson, I would." He says, "Will you have sex with me for 100?" She goes, "What do you think I am?" He goes, "No, we've already established that. Now we're just negotiating." Okay? There's a boundary. I'm not interested in having trafe in our building. Okay, it's not. It doesn't work. You're a synagogue. Okay, but that makes me unpopular with some people. So go ahead.
Don't they realize that they're turning their back on the values of being a Jew?
I think the deeper question is, do they care?
They don't care, first off.
Or their identification of what a Jew is over here. It's not a non-practicing Orthodox Jew. It's over here.
Are we still on topic? Because if
We're still talking.
okay, because I do have one question, and I ask it in all sincerity and nothing. How do we justify lighting candles after sundown on Shabbat?
Sure. So your question, if I'm understanding it, is,
And this isn't the only synagogue. I mean, they did it at the previous one too.
So your question, I want to make sure I understand the question first. Excuse me. Is Shabbat starts
On sundown.
and in theory at sundown, and we don't light candles when at sunset. Okay.
18 minutes before.
And the flip side of the question that you're not asking is Havdalah happens when there's 3 stars in the sky, right? And we don't necessarily do Havdalah when there's 3 stars in the sky. Okay, we may do it much later, much earlier, whatever. Okay. So I'm going to answer the question, which is a great question, with a couple of different stories and answers. Remember, we went back to Parsha Shoftim in the book of Deuteronomy. It says you will go to the judge of your time and do what he says, east or west, left or right. Remember that?
Right.
Okay. It's about relationship. Halacha, the word for law, means a way of going. Okay, it's literally what the word halacha means. Holach means to go. Lalachet means to go. Okay. It's a great story. I don't know if I told you, so if I did, stop me. Or throw something at me. So there's a great story that there are 2 chassids talking. And one chassid says to the other one, "My Rebbe is so great.
Sorry.
My Rebbe is so great that Shabbat was to start in 10 minutes. He was a half an hour home. And God gave him the strength to run that half hour's distance in 10 minutes. The other chassid says, that's nothing. My Rebbe is so great that Shabbat started in 10 minutes. He was an hour from home, and God made the Sabbath wait till he got home."
Huh.
It's a joke, but it's not.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm going to use Havdalah as an easier example. When does the Sabbath end? What's your understanding?
Well, the understanding is
3 stars in the
3
sky.
stars. in the
Okay, when you can. Okay, so are there not always 3 stars in the sky?
Someplace, of course.
No.
Oh, yes. You just can't see them.
People in Texas saw 3 stars
I understand.
at 11 a.m. today.
Okay.
Okay, so then the answer comes, well, no, it's when you can see the 3 stars. Okay, well, what about people living in Alaska? Okay, who have a 24-hour day? They don't see any stars, so they don't have Shabbat all summer? Or there's always 3 stars out at nighttime. Or what about there's a storm in Minnesota for 2.5 weeks and there's clouds and you can't see the stars?
Well, you're saying then that it's always before sundown someplace.
No. I'm saying it easier than that.
Yeah.
The Sabbath is determined by the leader of the community in order to serve the community. if we said services start at 4:56, 4:51, 5:01, 5:17, 6 throughout the year, you'd get nobody because it keeps shifting. So our services start at 7:30. During the summertime, we start at 7, right, Orlando? Okay, we do at 7.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's a choice that comes from Parsha Shoftim and from that passage in Talmud we studied. Lo b'shamayim hi, it's not in heaven. You give it to us to interpret.
So at home, if I'm late, I try to light candles within a minute of the 18 minutes before
Right.
sundown. What if I'm late? What if I got home late? What if the traffic? Is it terrible for me to light?
2 Jews
the
equals 3
candle?
opinions, 4 rabbis, and 5 temples.
I understand.
So I would say to you, better you should light them late than not light them.
Yeah.
Other rabbis would say you shouldn't light them. Okay. Which is it right to light them or is it right to not light
No,
them?
they should
The
be
answer
lit
is yes.
because it says you should light them.
It's yes. It doesn't say you should light them. It doesn't say you should light them. It says that you shall remember the Sabbath, and it says you shall protect the Sabbath. So we light 2 candles, one for Shomer, one for Zachor.
Like 3.
Okay? The tradition is often, for many of us, we light a 3rd one for people who died in the Holocaust who can't. We light 4 in our house, one for each member of our house, each of the human members. Rocky doesn't get his own candle, which I think upsets him, but we don't give him one. I have a friend, Mimi Feigelson, and Mimi would always light an extra candle for a woman who died in the Holocaust who can't light hers.
I'm lighting the extra for
The soldiers.
IDF.
Yeah.
So all those are great options. So should you not? I don't get into the shoulds with people generally. I just now, this past week I said we should all keep kosher because I think it helps the war effort. You want to light. You don't want to light. Don't light. I think it's more important to light late than not light, because really, how halachically Shomer Shabbos are you anyway?
Not.
Okay, so this goes back to this category of a non-practicing Orthodox Jew.
Mm.
That's really the category you're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, should you light? Should you not light?
I should have.
So Chabad rabbi is going to tell you, no, you better not.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
They would say that.
But that doesn't mean he's right.
No, it doesn't.
You should lie
So
about it.
All right, thank
does that help a little bit?
It does.
So that's why we do what we do. When we finish Yom Kippur, there have been times when the Canyon Club has a show that night. We finish before you can see 3 stars in the sky. Because the need to support the Canyon Club is more important than the need to wait for 3 stars. The law is to serve the people, not the people serve the law. This is a primary understanding of Judaism that is lost in the Orthodox world, and the whole concept of law is lost in the secular world. So it's to have the discussion. So does that help a little bit?
Yes, it does.
All right. So that's kind of where we are in today's world, right? We have this hatred towards Israel. It's based on a much older hatred, but it's mutated to anti-Zionism. We have all these different denominations, and then what started happening in the 90s is you had Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox, and Reconstructionists and Renewal. You started getting synagogues, which is what we are, called post-denominational synagogues. We are not attached or affiliated with a movement. So you wear a red yarmulke. Probably got it as being part of a men's club at a synagogue.
That's correct. But you said that red was special
It was,
yarmulkes.
but it was a conservative synagogue.
Yes.
And on the men's club and with synagogues that were affiliated with the conservative movement, all the men's club got red yarmulkes. Okay, they got red velvet yarmulkes. Okay, and it used to be that a temple was a Reformed temple, a conservative synagogue, and an Orthodox shul. Okay, but you had all these movements, and then temples started merging. Right, so you have Reform and Conservative, Reform and Orthodox. So now what are you? Post-denominational, which really started in the 90s, is the idea that a Jew is a Jew. So I teach Orthodox theology. let's be clear. What I teach is not what you're going to hear in a Reformed temple.
No.
No,
Okay, it's not. We use a conservative prayer book, right? And we use electric music right. So we do Talmud and tobacco. We're studying Talmud in English while drinking and smoking, right? It's the idea that it's trans-denominational. The denominations, remember, are only 250 years old. So prior to that, there are no denominations. So why are we making a separation that doesn't need to be? So many of the synagogues that have succeeded over the last 20, 30 years have been non or post-denominational. I don't like, at one point they were called trans-denominational. I don't like that term anymore, but they're post-denominational. And so, or as you know, I think the great conversation was, so Shochet used to describe Shomrei Torah as an Orthodox rabbi in a conservative synagogue with Reform congregants. Okay, we're Jews, and I think the best term is we are non-practicing. Our synagogue is a non-practicing Orthodox synagogue. Does that make sense? Is that him? No. Okay. So I think that's one of the pieces to kind of look at. So that kind of tells us where we are now. Okay. We have one last class next week. Okay, and then we have Passover. Then we're going to be done with this series. We'll start something else up after Pesach. But this is so we have gone through now 3,700 years of Judaism. Yes.
I missed it. I must have. Into the mysticism and Kabbalah.
We did it for 3 weeks, right?
I missed it.
yeah,
Bring you back next year.
I missed a couple.
We can teach whatever we want after Pesach. I have to be honest, I would like to do something that I have not done because Shochet asked me to do it, which is maybe we'll do this between Pesach and Shavuot. This was the last book that Heschel ever wrote. Not this exact copy, but this book. And Shochet gave me a number of these. A lot of them we do now. But I think with the idea of teaching from this book, it's Heschel's last book. So we may do that. We may do we may do mysticism and meditation. But the point is that I think that it's important to realize what we have gone over since the high holidays in these 6 months. And so we're going to go over next week. We'll go over everything, same way from when we began everything. Orlando, do you have that butcher paper still? Big chart.
Yes.
Okay. No. We don't need it now. Just for next week, we'll put it up. Okay. Because I don't want to have to rewrite it. It's a pain. We have butcher paper that will go all the way across the wall, and you'll see how much you've learned, which is a lot.
How much I forgot. That's
We learn. So does that help kind of put in together the last century as well?
Yeah.
What's gone on? And it's important to understand anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
I have a picture. I'm going to ask my friend to take a picture of a picture he has, and I'd like to show it to you. I think you'll love it.
All right, so we'll take it from there. And that's where we are.
Okay.
Okay. And that's a fabulous book.
I've got so many books to read at home right